Everything from fight week has wrapped up for Teofimo Lopez Shakur Stevenson. They weighed in today. They had their press conference on Thursday. I'll give you some quick thoughts on both days. So at the press conference, I liked what Teofimo was doing from a psychological standpoint. I don't, it's not that I love him talking about his dick in another man's mouth and balls in the mouth and all that kind of stuff. But what I liked about it was I've said for over a month now when breaking down this fight, and I'm not sure you're going to get a pick out of me one way or the other. This might just be a may the best man win kind of scenario here, as it always is. But we'll see. What I liked about it from Teofimo was a lot of people think, and maybe they're right, Teofimo has to press Shakur Stevenson, has to impose himself, has to make it a dog fight, and all those kinds of things. But I've been realistic about Teofimo's skill set. I've seen him stalking guys with his lead hand low enough. And again, guys like a Floyd Mayweather, when they had to stalk somebody like a Zab Judah or a Conor McGregor or other fights in their careers, they have a high guard to go to. And Teo hasn't shown a consistent high guard to go to. Canelo, high guard, moves the head around. Tyson, high guard, peekaboo style. He hasn't shown that in his repertoire. What he is a super athletic fighter. So I think his best way of winning this fight, his path to victory, is a much more competitive version of Roy Jones against James Toney. Take this master technician, what Roy Jones was able to do to James Toney and Bernard Hopkins, and find a way to make him have to come to you a little bit more than he normally would have to because of your athletic gifts. So that being said, when he started pissing Shakur off and making Shakur take a step to him at the press conference, I thought, this is good foreshadowing for you. You might get this guy who's convinced you can't get him off his game, who's laser focused. Maybe you can. Maybe you can piss him off, get him a little hot under the collar, make him come to you so you can be the athletic counterpuncher that you fight best as opposed to being on that front foot with that lead hand low where you're susceptible to counters like you were against Sandor Martin, who put you down with a check right hook. But then the weigh-in happens, and I got kind of flashes of Canelo Crawford again. And what I mean by that is Teofimo at the weigh-in looked like Canelo did to a degree at the weigh-in against Terence Crawford. He looks like a guy who's been making this weight cut for years in this weight class and has lost some mass. I remember Kenny Porter telling me about Sean as the years went on, when they dropped that last 10 pounds from 157 to 147, that's where he said a lot of the power would get sapped for Sean. And that's why Sean was folding guys in the amateurs, which is rare in the amateurs, but wasn't known as a puncher in the pros. Sometimes that weight cut began to take away and drain him of his power. And I think Teofimo's coming off one of the best performances of his career against Barboza, but his skills and his speed were wonderful in that fight, but the power burst wasn't really there. He didn't have too many bursts of punching power. And so what I'm getting at is Canelo, when you compare his body at the Canelo Crawford weigh-in to when he fought Billy Joe Saunders, where he damn near looked like Zach Thomas, when his mass was very obvious, when his neck was hulking, he's big throughout. By the time he's making 168 for a number of years, he looked a little thinner. It looked like some of that weight cut was eating at his muscle a little bit, even though he's shredded. And meanwhile, Crawford is having his first fight at 168 pounds, just like Shakur Stevenson's having his first fight at 140 pounds. 4 years ago, Teofimo was fighting at 140. 4 years ago, Shakur Stevenson was fighting at 130. So Shakur is allowing his body, as he's growing into manhood in his 20s, to fill out and move up. Teo's still making the same weight cut. And I saw Shakur through the shoulders, maybe looking like the bigger man, just like Crawford through the shoulders and everything, actually looked like the bigger guy, despite coming up in weight, looking hydrated, looking comfortable. Teo, to me, looked a little bit thinner than the tank he was at 135 and how he looked against Josh Taylor a couple years ago at 140. So those were a few of my takeaways to get us started.
This press conference is one of those moments in boxing where I have to be honest in that I feel like Teo won the first round. I said this when we initially talked about the fight, that Teo Lopez should be the favorite, and he's a betting underdog. Now, a lot of people took that to mean I was picking Teo, or that I thought Teo had a huge advantage over Shakur and is going to win the fight. Being the betting odds on favorite on paper is not necessarily the same thing as being my pick. What I am saying, however, is by all metrics of what's been accomplished, of what's been proven, of what we have seen, and what the circumstances are, Teofimo Lopez should be the favorite. He's got the better resume. He's the champion. It's his division. I believe that his style is more judge friendly if Shakur Stevenson fights Shakur Stevenson's fight at Madison Square Garden in New York. If Teo is the aggressor, which may not be the best strategy for him to win the fight, by the way, but if he is the aggressor and is able to stay out of serious harm's way while Shakur is on the back foot and fighting a very technical fight and shutting down the action, we could end up with a decision where a lot of people think Shakur should have won it technically, but it goes to Teo because he was just more aggressive and Shakur seemed to not be engaging while Teo was having less effective pressure, but getting rounds on the judges' scorecards. I could 100% see that happening, which to me is another reason why you could favor Teo in this fight, even if you think he's not necessarily your pick to win it. This is the circumstance that we find ourselves in, and I also believe that Teo is a greater challenge than him being the kind of underdog that he is gives him credit for. I want Shakur Stevenson, if he wins this fight, to get the credit for beating a guy who should have been the favorite. Because that's another thing that actually takes away from the Shakur Stevenson win, if he does in fact win, by characterizing Teofimo Lopez as less than what he is. He's world champion at the division. This is Shakur stepping up into his weight class. This is two resumes that really aren't in comparison. This is southpaw whom Lopez has had great success with. Not 100% success. He's had his challenges, but again, I think that can be explained away by Teo Lopez's mentality, where he doesn't necessarily always show up as his best self to fight his best fight if he's not fighting the better opponent. Well, we know he's fighting a hell of a great opponent coming into this fight with great potential to possibly be, and I'm talking about Shakur now, a number one pound for pound one day. However, Shakur hasn't actually accomplished that yet. He hasn't had that signature win yet where you can say this is definitely who he is, not just who we think he is, based on the skill set that we've seen from lesser fighters, against lesser fighters, I should say, that now he has an opportunity to demonstrate against a better fighter. You have to give Shakur the opportunity to prove that he is what we think he is, and that what we see against somewhat lesser fighters applies to better fighters. Teofimo has already checked that box. And so when I say that Teo has won the first round, it's because he got Shakur to come out of himself, got him out of character a bit. I liked the first press conference where Teo also said some weird suspect shit and was like, what are you talking about, bro? The reaction to that from Shakur the first time was perfect. Just be like, are you hearing this? What is this guy? What is this? Don't engage it. Don't let him actually reel you in. Just point out how weird that is. And it is weird at best. And, and we all understand, like, well, that really has nothing to do with the fight. And why is that even on your mind? Like, what is going on? With all that said, I have to admit, it worked on me too. I was like, what the fuck's wrong with this guy? It's triggering.
Roy Jones agrees with you. Roy Jones said that he would have had to fight him before the fight for saying things like that. Yeah.
I don't know if that's a master stroke from Lopez or if it really is more racism. And here's why I say that. Because the whole monkey banana thing, he got all of us blacks pissed off by it. He definitely made me furious. I had a rant about it. I still mean every word of that rant. Whenever I see Tio, he's always nice. I've only had one poor interaction with him, but I'll give that to any fighter. At some point, we've interacted enough to where you can have an off night. But on balance, Tio's always nice. He's always, borderline charming. We're cool. But then he goes off and says this abjectly racist shit, and that pissed me off and got me ranting about him. And now he says this weird suspect shit twice at two different press conferences. That if you're talking to me like that, all this other shit is out the window. We gotta go. I mean, there's no way in any world on any day that I even land a punch on Teofimo Lopez, much less win any kind of fight that we might get in any context. But if you're talking to me like that, I'm gonna put my best effort forward and get knocked out trying to attack you for what you said. I think it's a cultural thing, though. Like the monkey banana thing is obviously a jab that is historically racial connotations, and he knows exactly what he's doing by pushing those buttons, and now wants to be forgiven as though he's just saying things. But this other thing that he said at the press conference this time is also, I believe, very culturally triggering. I think black community, black men in particular, are not hearing that. We're not having that. That is crossing the line. That is like spitting in a guy's face. That is like it's actually as if you put your hands on somebody talking that way. And I hate it. I hate that we can be triggered like this. I'm no better than anybody else. I am as easily triggered by these kind of things. And I wish that I could rise above it. I wish that we as a community could just shrug it off, laugh it off. We've got too many triggers, dude. The monkey stuff, the N word, the suspect comments, and the specifically what he said, which I won't even repeat. I'm more likely to repeat the N word than what Tio said at the press conference. You understand? But those things, as we are born and raised in the community, are absolutely crossing the line, habitual line stepper, fighting words. You do not let a man say these kind of things to you, period. No matter where you're at or what's on the line, what the stakes are, we need to stop being so easily triggered in that way. I really like what Shakur did the first time out. I was like, he actually took the weight off of me. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. This is stupid. What is this guy talking about? Like, you know what I mean? It brought me out of the haze of fury. And this time, he got Shakur out of his seat. He walked over. He played him like a puppet on a string. If he can do that on Saturday night, then you got Shakur fighting the wrong fight. You got Tio taking his advantage. Tio's found the button to push. He made you do something that you didn't want to do. Shakur didn't want to do that. That wasn't I guarantee you, that's not what he came on stage to do. He wasn't trying to hype the fight that way. His first reaction, the first press conference, was the right reaction, was the cool-headed reaction, was the calm fighter reaction. And this was a man's reaction to being disrespected and really watching another man cross the line with him in a way we just culturally won't accept. So while I think it's a commentary on maybe another advantage mentally that Tio has taken over Shakur, I also want it to be a bit of a commentary on us as a community that we have to stop letting these people do this to us. We have these three things we can no longer simply be so easily manipulated by. The N-word, the monkey shit, and all this suspect talk. Just point out how weird it is, how whoever's saying that is such a fucking loser and really needs to be the one who's embarrassed and let it pass. Because too many men have gotten in too much trouble by one of those three triggers.
Well, it can go, and I'll let you. I'll bring you back to the weigh-in a moment too to get your thoughts on that. But yeah, that's what I mean. I think Tio's better off finding a way to make Shakur take a step forward as opposed to calculating on with his step back game, which he's excellent at. And Shakur, he doesn't cut the ring off well. Neither does Tio. Neither one of them cut the ring off well, like my man Tim Bradley says. But I think he's better off with Shakur coming forward to him. And then interestingly enough, maybe they got under Wally Moses' skin too, Shakur's grandfather, who always plays the background, but now on the biggest stage has been more vocal than ever. And Teofimo Sr. telling Wally Moses, "Oh, we got the Avengers. You got Floyd. You got Andre. You got Terrence." Picking at him like your contribution is only but so whole. It's not just you. It's you and all those guys. He really listens to them as much as you, and kind of attacking his ego, right? But at the same time, Wally Moses talking about Tio Senior being drunk the night before, in the lobby and all that, and Tio Senior having Terrence Crawford pull up on him. So it's not like he's pulling up nothing but aces this week himself. But if him and his son intended to say those things to get Shakur and his trainer a little bit off game, who, by the way, have had some contention in the corner, like the Artem Hardatunyan fight, when sometimes Wally Moses wanted more activity from his grandson and Shakur was arguing with him back and forth in the corner. Tio Sr. has not. The most impressive thing he did was call a shot on Lomachenko for years and said, "My son is perfect for Lomachenko." He'll beat him. And then his son went out there and did it. "I told everybody." And he wore the Pop Stradamus hat. But even in beating Josh Taylor, he hasn't had that kind of moment yet. It's really since. So that's an interesting dynamic between the two trainers. But I'll let you get, man. There's a few other things I had to touch on as well. But yeah, go ahead to the
deal with the trainer father thing again?
Well, no, I was going to say this. It could go one or two ways when you pull at that kind of level of disrespect Teofimo did. It could work in your favor. It could make the guy fight a little bit out of his game plan and to your advantage, or it could backfire on you if Shakur can gain control in the second half of this fight. And like Lennox Lewis did to Mike Tyson, where he remembered him talking about, "I'm going to eat your children, Lennox," and all that kind of stuff. And he said he tenderized Mike, or not, he didn't, but people in his team and people that covered Lewis Tyson noted that he tenderized Mike. He didn't put him out of his misery as quickly. And Emmanuel Stewart was in the corner saying, "Just let the fucking right hand go, get him out of there." And he was like, "No, I want to make him suffer a little bit in there before I take him out of his misery." So if Teofimo, who kind of like Canelo Alvarez against Terrence Crawford, functions off that upper body reflexes and athleticism a lot, his upper body movement's very flashy. If that takes a toll on him, because athleticism burns fuel, whereas Shakur Stevenson fights in a little bit more efficient manner, little half steps back, controlling his distance. Tio has to cross arm, he goes all over the place with it, and it's effective. But if that burns up energy, and Shakur, who's still stronger in the second half of the fight, he could make him eat those words. And even though I'm talking about Tio needs to make Shakur come forward, Shakur doesn't cut the ring off well when he comes forward. Sometimes he stands straight up with his shoulder roll look coming forward, chin's a little bit up. Every fighter has flaws, but he's still razor sharp accurate, and very accurate with his body punches too. So there's a scenario where even if Tio gets him to come forward, he gets broken down, or he wins the fight. Anyways, go ahead with what you're going to say.
I mean, that is a very kind way of looking at what the result of this could be. Second half of the fight, Shakur remembers what was said and punishes Tio for the insult. I don't see that happening. However, I take your point in that you question a religious Ukrainian man's faith in God, and you end up pushing the horses.
That's what I'm saying.
You don't want to do anything that puts a fighter in a more focused mentality on besting you and doing even better themselves than they otherwise might do, simply because now in their mind they can't give you anything based on how disrespectful or the level of insult that you have bestowed upon them. It's like a Bruce Lee movie. You have insulted my dojo, you have insulted my family. The whole movie now is me having to get revenge based on the insult to the dojo. This is a kind of motivation that a world-class fighter can use. We've seen the best of the best use microaggressions to win world championships in all types of sports, So you don't want to give a guy this something like this to feed on. But when you do something like this and you make a guy fight outside of what his best strategy would be, then you've actually accomplished something in winning the mind game if the fighter's working against himself with that motivation. For instance, Amir Khan and
Danny
Danny
Garcia.
Garcia,
Yep.
right? This is what I'm talking about. Amir Khan is a better fighter than Danny Garcia. Amir Khan should have been able to, I believe this, a better boxer than him could have won that fight if he had fought his own fight, which he could have fought. We know what the knock on a Khan is he's chinny and all that. But at that time, he wasn't quite as chinny yet, right? And I think he could have stayed away from getting hit with that big bomb from Garcia not easily, but effectively. If he had stayed calm and fought his fight, that was his fight to lose. And he lost it mentally. I don't think he lost it based on his skill set or ability. And this is what I'm talking about with Shakur Stevenson. And I believe Shakur will settle down. Shakur will not be necessarily in that same mind space that he was in at the press conference in the moment. But then in the fight, Shakur has also been warned in a way by Teo about Teo might fight dirty. Teo might do any number of things in there to try to make you angry, frustrated, insulted. Do something to take your focus away from being a precise, flawless boxing technician. Any number of things that he might be able to do in the fight, in the ring, to take you off your game. He already knows advantages him, and that he needs that advantage to secure a victory. So if there's a tell in this, if I'm talking to Shakur, it's that. He's telling you that he knows he needs to get you to fight a different fight. There's going to be pressure on Shakur from the fans if he's not offensive minded, let me say. If he is not engaging when Teo is engaging. If he's shutting down the action and boxing precise and fighting the kind of fight that makes maybe a Shakur Stevenson victory over Teofimo easy even. Fans aren't going to like that. You're going to hear the boos. Commentators are going to get after you. People are going to get restless in their chairs. You're going to look over and see Turkey. He's going to be shaking his head. That's pride fucking with you. You fight through that shit. Don't let that take you off of the game and the real job at hand, which is to win the fight. And that's what I believe Teo is doing. And if I could just talk for a second about this father situation, not unlike Angel Garcia, like sometimes these fathers, man, can be the best to motivate their sons and get their opponents wound up. Bill Haney is excellent at that as well. Like, I get it. There's a role for you there, especially if your son isn't necessarily the best of talkers or, doesn't want to say the things that you can say to get under a guy's skin. But at the same time, your father, like a big John Fury, can be, and like a Angel Garcia, and like a Lopez can be a distraction during fight week. Like you have to find and strike the right balance. Now, again, these are rumors. I did see a video of what appears to be Teo's dad throwing up, potentially, possibly, who knows, but it appears to be from like alcohol, or drinking. He's been known to be inebriated at events. It's not a crime. It's legal. Nothing necessarily inherently wrong with that, unless, in fact, it does take away from your son's ability to focus on the job at hand or distract from the mission or prevent you from showing up at a press conference where you might be able to add a couple of barbs that takes Shakur or his team out of their game, to add some logs onto the fire once you get Shakur out of his chair and acting outside himself. Like that's really your job. That's really your role if you're going to be that guy as the father and the trainer who wants to play the mind games. You got to know the balance. And I just see once again where a father is taking a bit of the shine and spotlight away from his fighter, away from his son, making it about himself. And that has Terrence Crawford whispering in your ear. It, has him just looking a bit silly and unnecessarily. Who knows if this actually has any influence on what happened Saturday night? I think he definitely contributed to the loss that Teofimo Lopez suffered from Cambosis. I do think that the mentality in the corner that what uh, Tio's father was saying and gambling on and getting in Tio's mind about an early knockout contributed to him losing that fight. So we got to watch all of these elements, and they all have some place and some bit to play in this thing. It'll be interesting to see what kind of fight happens in the first half on Saturday night. And that will let you know not only who won the first round through the press conference and the weigh-in, but who's winning the mind games, who's actually got a strategy to get the other one frustrated outside himself. If in fact, being champion, having had experience in this level of competition that Tio has, playing these mind games successfully in some cases, and being the victim of his own mind games in other scenarios, gives him enough experience to manipulate the situation to give himself an advantage in this fight that Shakur has to give him. This is an interesting storyline to watch. And I don't know what we're going to see. I want to see a competitive action fight from Shakur as a fan. But as an analyst, as a pundit, I got to say that that's not the fight he needs to be fighting.
Not early, not early, but maybe if Teofimo, who again expends a lot, if he fights with a lot of his athleticism as he's one to do, he might be the guy who's a little more tired in the back half of the fight. And remember, he has asthma, and Wally Moses believes that's something they're going to take advantage of in the second half of this fight. But I think it's more important for Teofimo to get off to a good start in this fight than it is for Shakur. I think I could even see Teofimo dropping Shakur early with a left hook because I think that's the shot that might be available there for him more than the southpaw killer, the right hand. Against the southpaw, you got to be effective with your right hand, and that lead hand jousting between both fighters who sometimes neglect their jabs is going to be important. And the last time Shakur Stevenson fought a fighter who could really equal him in speed and timing, it was De Los Santos, and a lot of his offense went down. He had one of the lowest CompuBox recorded fights. I know his hand was hurt, but that's the question stylistically they have to answer here. When Tio's been faced with boxers that can make you fall short with your punches and counter you, he hasn't looked as good as fighters that need to get in closer distances with him, Lomachenko included, for being as superb a boxer as he was with his 65-inch reach and being the smaller man. He had to get into a certain range to get off his offense on Teofimo. So Tio has to answer those questions. Shakur has to answer against someone, Zepeda was relentless, but against a guy who can equal his athleticism or even eclipse it with speed and timing, will he pull the trigger as often as he does against a fighter like Zepeda? So I could even see a scenario where Tio actually drops Shakur for the first time in his career and then Shakur comes on strong and wins a decision. Or even nobody thinks Shakur can stop Teofimo. I think, again, if he fights with a certain level of confidence in the pocket now, coming off the Zepeda fight, where he found out once and for all he is a dog, because the Nakatia fight and the De Los Santos fight, he got the yips a little bit and was timid. But he got so much blowback, so much shit from that he went toe-to-toe with Zepeda and probably discovered a deeper part of himself in terms of grit. And so I think that fight will pay dividends for him in this fight. I think Lopez's last fight against Barboza will pay dividends for him because he dialed up being Gordo again. Instead of this front foot stalker looking to load up and hurt somebody, he dialed up what he did good against Josh Taylor. He dialed up what he did against Arnold Barboza. He used all his athleticism and his speed and his skill, and that I think that's the Teofimo that needs to show up. So I could see a fight where Teo gets off to a good start, maybe even scores a knockdown. Shakur comes on late, maybe because Teo's face busts up a lot and because Shakur's accurate to the body and because Teo might be expending more energy earlier in the fight to get off to a good start. Shakur surprises people and is surgical and can stop them or win a controversial, a close fight, a close decision where he actually comes on strong. If you're a Teo fan, if you're Teofimo or some objective observers, you're saying, hey, I thought Teo won that. He got off to the hot start. He had big moments early. I could foresee that happening. And so but that lead hand jousting to take it to the X's and O's of that fight is all you really saw in the 16 seconds of them sparring as young men. There's a chance that the high speed chess that everybody's hoping for that broke out in the Haney Lomachenko fight, that is just chess. And that might not be the most exciting. I'll enjoy it as a purist. But what we're hoping for here is some kind of high-speed chess. We're talking about the trainers, and I still want to get what you saw at the weigh-in. Stacey McKinley, some people might look at him, as like a glorified Don King henchman in his heyday. But Stacey McKinley had Tyson, past his prime, but had Tyson, had Ricardo Mayorga, who upset Vernon Forrest, and he worked with James Toney. And he talked to our boy Brendan from True School, and Stacey McKinley knows the shoulder roll well. He thinks he's going to have Teofimo prepared to crack the code on that shoulder roll. But ultimately, Shakur is the betting favorite because the name of the game is to land your punches and not let the other fighter land his punches. Shakur has the superior defense and he has the superior accuracy and punch placement. But Teofimo might have more raw hand speed and punching power, although they have two different types of speed. Shakur has that point A to point B, straight laser shot speed, and Teofimo, he's like a streaky shooter in basketball. He could get hot. If he catches a rhythm, look out. He catches fire and can discombobulate Shakur's rhythm and all that. That's why ultimately I'm not really going to pick this fight. I'm laying out some scenarios I could see, and may the best man win in that regard. I don't feel like dealing with the fucking trolls early on. I picked all the other fights during this weekend, but I want it to be about may the best man win. And we'll analyze exactly down the middle without my ego in it, one way or the other, whether I was right or wrong. But to take it back to the discussion, what did you see in the weigh-in? Did you see part of what I saw of the shades of Canelo Crawford, where one guy has been making this weight for a long time, is starting to look a little skinnier, getting down to the weight class, and the other guy's having his first fight at the weight and looks a little bit more filled out and hydrated?
What you see as a potential outcome for the fight being an early knockdown by Teofimo of Shakur Stevenson, and then on the back half of the fight, Shakur coming back and busting up Teo for a close finish or maybe a dominating win in the second half of the fight that makes up for the knockdown. That is an instant classic. That makes Shakur the kind of star that Top Rank believed he could be, that his greatest of fans think he already is. It makes the rematch set in stone and potentially one of the great trilogy fights even of the generation. If it does go that way, though, however, something's gone terribly wrong for Shakur Stevenson. He has absolutely gotten drawn into a fight that he shouldn't have been in, or found out that there's levels to this and maybe his level isn't where people thought it was, or even he himself believed he should be performing at. Because if that is what happens, that is not Shakur fighting Shakur's fight.
Well, I just got to interject one thing. When you're talking about maybe he's not at we'll see. Because one thing I did notice about him, and we've talked about the flaws in Teo's game, the lead hand low, he's getting checked by fighters that are lesser than overall, like Sandor Martin and Jermaine Ortiz. Some people thought those guys won that fight. Shakur, for being as excellent boxer he is and as precise as he is, doesn't punch laterally that much, like Andre Ward, like Pernell Whitaker, like Bernard Hopkins. He has a step back counter game, and then he'll walk to you a little bit and give up shots, catch everything. And then when it's his turn, precise with everything. But he doesn't punch laterally that much. He's compared to Pernell Whitaker because he's this brilliant Olympian southpaw, but he doesn't punch laterally that much. It's just something I'm noting here. No, go ahead, Raheem.
All right, laterally, vertically, diagonally. Don't be getting up off the canvasy, is what I'm
Right,
saying.
right.
Don't be forced into being a pressure fighter in the second half of the fight because you got to make up for lost rounds and get back into the fight. Don't be that guy. So yeah, man. I with all that said, boy, I'd love to see a fight that is that entertaining. The weigh-in betrays what I believe you see in Canelo and Crawford, but for me, what was communicated while still relative to that fight is that Crawford has shown Shakur how to put the weight on properly. Granted, the jump that he's making isn't nearly as big as the jump that Crawford was making, but the way he looks, as comfortable as he is, as easy as he is, a pound or so below the limit, he looks perfect. He does look hydrated. And even sometimes you can tell by a fighter's skin how hydrated they are, how comfortable, how long they've been comfortable at the weight. You understand? It's not, it's hard to describe, but I'm telling you, because we've seen so many of these things with the naked eye, even the texture of the
It's
skin can
not thin
give
on the
you.
muscle, where the muscle almost looks like it's got no room to spare. You know,
Right,
like
and so,
there's no,
or a
yeah,
guy's dry, you know what I mean,
yeah.
which shows dehydration, and yet he's still trying to make the weight and has probably put on too much weight and still had to boil down, even though he's jumping up weight classes. All these kind of things can be part and parcel of changing weight classes, but save the reaction at the press conference. Also, how calm, happy, smooth Shakur's mentality is, the way he physically looks like he is incredibly comfortable, and stepping into that weight class is going, I believe, to feel better. He's going to feel better than he has felt. He's going to be weighed down. The jump isn't that big. He will maintain his speed. He will be more comfortable. Camp will have been easier in that regard, and he'll be having fun in there, which is what I thought I saw from Crawford against Canelo. That while we all talked about the weight jump at nauseum by the time the fight actually took place, it was actually an advantage for Crawford making that weight, being able to be that comfortable, putting the weight on properly, and fighting with a one less stress factor than normal. You don't have to bulk up after the weigh in and put extra pounds on to get back hydrated and all that stuff. You stay comfortable. I think that is going to play a role in this as well. It'll be up to Teofimo to see if who doesn't look like really a bigger or taller or more sizable opponent. They look fairly even in size wise, even though Shakur might be a pound or so lighter than him on the scales. I think on the night there probably won't be that great a differential in size, and that somehow, even though it's Shakur who's stepping into Lopez's weight class, I think it might be an advantage for Shakur being able to step into that weight class.
Yep. So, hey, man, may the best man win. Again, I think if Tio wins, it's because he's superior athleticism, superior talent overall. Again, a little bit like Roy Jones against James Toney. I think if Shakur wins, it's superior precision, accuracy, defense, timing, distance control, that kind of thing. We'll see. We'll see. May the
Yeah,
best
you
man
know
win.
what? May the best man win, and Shakur Stevenson is the best man. I am biased as of the press conference, the final press conference in this fight. I'm rooting for Shakur Stevenson because I have been officially and significantly triggered by Teofimo Lopez's comments at the press conference, his previous comments of a racial nature, his just absolute habitual line stepping. So, yes, I am officially letting you know that I am Team Stevenson on this one. For those reasons, I think he is the better man, and the better man should win this fight. Kudos to Lopez for finding the buttons to push to take me out of my neutral position and back a fighter simply because I want Shakur to win. There's no point in pretending otherwise. I really found it distasteful. These things, this accumulative uh, fouls, these accumulative violations from Lopez have given me no other choice. Now, you have chosen to not officially pick this fight, which I also find absolutely disappointing.
All right.
I must say, I want that pick. But in lieu of an official Sean Zittel pick for this one, which we will all be disappointed not to have,
Yep. Yep.
what does Prince Leo say?
My son has Teofimo winning the fight. I had Leo look at the weigh-in. Leo picked Canelo Crawford, and Raheem was right there. And Leo, who's half Mexican from his mom, Leo goes, I want Canelo to win because Leo's Mexican. He goes, but I have Crawford winning, right? So Leo was objective. He picked Crawford. He was right. I asked him about Haney versus Norman. He said Norman during fight week, and then I made him watch the weigh-in so we could have one last look at it. And Leo goes, "No, Dad, no!" Like with a sense of urgency, he's like, "Haney, Haney wins the fight," and and Haney wound up being Norman. I asked him last week, "Who wins Murataya versus Cruz?" He takes a long look at it and he goes, "Murataya is the bigger man, Dad," and he picked Murataya. Murataya wins. I asked him. He
Wait,
has
wait, just so
Shakur for a
everybody
lot.
knows, how old is Leonardo?
6 years old with 102 fever right now. He had a miss today from school. So I
And
had him watch the weigh-in, and after having Shakur much of the week, he picked Teofimo Lopez. So he's 3-0, but if he gets this one wrong, the kid has 102 fever. We got to cut him some slack.
well, we're accepting no qualifier, Sean.
Yeah, yeah,
The
you're right.
Zittel
There's a
family
man's world,
pick
right?
is Teofimo
Leonardo
Lopez.
Zittel has Teofimo Lopez.